Rain lashed the cobblestones of Rome on the night the world's fate shuddered into view. It was 1590, and within the Vatican's shadowed vaults, a monk's trembling hands brushed dust from a manuscript older than the Black Death. The parchment crackled like a curse as he unfurled it. The ink bleeding prophecies in jagged Latin, 112 popes, each reduced to a cryptic motto, stretching from Celestine II in the 12th century to the chilling final entry Petrus Romanus, a pope who would nourish his flock in tribulation. As Rome fell, the air thickened with incense and dread. Could these words, attributed to a long-dead Irish saint, truly be divine visions, or a heretic's gambit? Saint Malachy of Armagh had died in 1148, cloaked in whispers of miracles and midnight visions. A reformer who'd walked barefoot through bogs to purge corruption. He claimed God showed him the papacy's end during a pilgrimage to Rome. But the manuscript vanished, only to resurface centuries later, its timing suspect unearthed. Amid the chaos of the Counter-Reformation, when the Church hungered for symbols of unbroken authority, skeptics hissed of forgery, yet the mottos clung to history like barnacles to a sinking ship. Ex Castro Tiberis, from a castle on the Tiber, mirrored Celestine II's birthplace. De Mediatate Lunae, from the half-moon, marked the 16-day reign of Urban VII, whose papal emblem bore a crescent. Coincidence, or proof of a mind unshackled from time? The storm outside swelled, rattling leaded windows as the monk traced Malachy's final lines, asterisk in persecution extrema. The last pope would bear the weight of Peter's name amid fire and, ruin. Tonight, the Vatican's candles guttered in the damp, casting leviathan shadows on the walls. Somewhere, a bell tolled, low and hollow. The monk crossed himself, sweat pricking his neck. Prophecy or poison, the manuscript now breathed a new riddle wrapped in vellum, its truth as elusive as the saints themselves. And in the silence a question coiled like smoke. Asterisk, if the end was foretold, did free will ever stand a chance? Asterisk, asterisk, the winds that carved the bogs of medieval Ireland carried more than salt and storm, they bore whispers of a man who walked the knife's edge between saint and sorcerer. Malachy y Morger, born in 1094, was a paradox cloaked in sackcloth, a reformer who raised corruption with the fervor of a zealot, a healer whose touch allegedly mended withered limbs, and a visionary who spoke to angels in the flicker of candlelight. His Ireland was a land of shadowed monasteries and warring clans where faith rotted into feudalism. Malachy, ordained Archbishop of Armagh at just 30, became a scourge of decadent bishops, stripping gilded altars and replacing them with ash and penance. But it was in 1139, during a pilgrimage to Rome, that the veil between realms tore open. The journey itself was a gauntlet of suffering, a months-long trudge through alpine passes, crusted with late snow, his feet bloodied, his breath ragged with prayer. Historians argue he sought papal approval for his reforms. Mystics insist he was lured by a divine summons. When he collapsed at the gates of Rome, fevered and gaunt, Pope Innocent II received him not as a beggar, but as a prophet. In the crypts, beneath St. Peter's Basilica, Malachy's visions began, a procession of spectral figures, each robed in white, their faces blurred but their symbols searing, a tower engulfed in flames, a lion chained to a broken cross, a sun blackened at its zenith. When he awoke, he scribbled feverishly in Latin, distilling each pope into a single gnomic phrase. Asterisk ex Castro Tiberis. De meditate luna, de labor solis, asterisk the manuscript, sealed with wax and silence, was gifted to Innocent, who allegedly buried it deep within the Vatican's bones. Fearing its power, for 450 years the prophecy slept, or so the tale insists. Then, in 1595, amid the Reformation's wildfire, it clawed its way back into the light. The timing reeked of theater, the Church, hemorrhaging followers to Luther's revolt, suddenly rediscovered Malachy's list, a celestial endorsement of papal infallibility. Scholars snarled. The manuscript's Latin bore traces of 16th-century syntax. Its abrupt resurface felt less like divine intervention than a cardinal's gambit. Yet the mottos fit with a precision that chilled. Take Pius V, 1566 to 1572. Branded Angelus Nemorosus, Angel of the Woods, a pope who'd once served as inquisitor in forest-shrouded Lombardy, hunting heresy like a Wolf. Or Benedict the 15th, 1914 to 1922, Religio Depopulata, Religion Laid Waste, whose reign straddled the apocalyptic trenches of World War I and the Spanish flu. Coincidence, scoffed rationalists. But why did the forger's hoax stretch beyond 1590, predicting popes unborn when the text was found? Malachy himself died in 1148, murmuring of a crown awaiting in Clairvaux, his body laid to rest in a Burgundian abbey. Yet his legacy curdled into folklore. Peasants swore his ghost paced the shores of Loch Ness, clutching a scroll that glowed with damned script. The Church, uneasy, neither endorsed nor condemned the prophecies, letting them fester in the margins. Of faith, modern psychologists diagnose Malachy as an epileptic, his visions neural storms mistaken for revelation. But what of the manuscript's eerie cadence? Each motto, a riddle wrapped in a saint's cipher that bends to history like a willow to wind. Was this the work of a calculating forger? Or a man who briefly held God's ledger in his hands? The truth may lie in the silence between the lines. Malachy's Rome was a city of crumbling aqueducts and scheming cardinals, where power was a poison and truth a currency. Perhaps the prophecies were never meant to predict, but to warn. A mystic scream against the rot he saw consuming the Church. Or perhaps they are a mirror reflecting not destiny, but the human hunger to see patterns in chaos, to believe that even the end of days has a rhyme, a reason, a name. As the manuscript's vellum crumbles in Vatican vaults, its final words linger, sharp as a dagger's edge, in persecution extrema. The last pope's reign, it whispers, will be both apocalypse and absolution. And somewhere in the mist, Malachy's ghost waits, watching as history ticks toward its haunted end, The mottos slithered through history like serpents in a sacred garden, 112 fragments of Latin, cryptic and cold, each a riddle etched in the shadow of eternity. To decode them is to walk a labyrinth where coincidence and destiny blur, where every pope becomes a pawn in a game played across 9 centuries. Begin with the early church, ex castro Tiberis, from a castle on the Tiber. A bland phrase until 1143, when Celestin II, born in Città di Castello, a fortress town, clinging to the Tiber's banks, ascended the throne. The match was seamless, too seamless had Malachy merely chronicled the obvious. Then came the Renaissance, and the mottos sharpened into blades. De fructu hobis juvabit, from the fruit of Jupiter he will profit. Enter Pius VII, 1800 to 1823. Crowned as Napoleon, emperor and modern Jupiter, carved Europe into an empire. The Pope would endure captivity, his prophet reduced to survival. Coincidence? Or had Malachy glimpsed the divine comedy of power, the God-King and the Pontiff, locked in a dance of ruin? But it was the modern era that turned whispers to screams. De labor solis, from the labor of the sun. John Paul II, born on May 18, 1920, during a solar eclipse, a man whose labor spanned continents, his papacy a sun that never set. And then Benedict XVI, Gloria Olivae, the glory of the olive emblem of peace. Yet Benedict, once a reluctant reformer, resigned in scandal's shadow, his legacy neither war nor tranquility, but a bitter twilight. The mottos. Bent, twisted, adapted, as if the prophecies were alive, feeding on paradox, scholars dissect the phrases like surgeons probing a corpse. Ex castro Tiberis could refer to any river castle. Pius VII's link to Jupiter relies on poetic metaphor. John Paul's sun labor might nod to his tireless travel, not celestial signs. But the pattern persists, a trail of breadcrumbs. Through time. Take Paul VI, 1963 to 1978, Flos Florum, flower of flowers. His coat of arms bore 3 Lila Innocent, until you learn his final years were choked by the stench of Vatican financial rot, the flowers wilted by corruption. Or Pius X, 1903 to 1914, Ignis Ardens, burning fire. A pope who died heartbroken as Europe ignited into World War I. His pleas for peace drowned by artillery. The most haunting mottos, though, are those that defy reason. De meditate luna, from the half-moon. In 1590, Urban VII reigned for 12 days half, a lunar cycle before succumbing to malaria. His family crest, a crescent moon. How could a 12th century mystic predict a papal emblem 4 centuries unborn? Skeptics sneer. The prophecies were forged in the 1590s, retrofitting mottos to known popes. But then why include entries for future pontiffs? Why risk exposure unless the author believed or knew the game would outlast scrutiny? The manuscript breathes with a logic beyond our grasp. It does not predict names or dates, but essences, a pope's trials distilled into symbols like tarot cards dealt by time itself. John Paul I, de meditate luna, again, reigned 33 days in 1978, his half-moon cut down mid-phase. Was Malachy's vision a warning of brief reigns or a numerologist's fever dream? The answers crumble like aged parchment. And what of the living? Francis, the Jesuit Pope of the Poor, bears no motto. Malachy's list ends with his predecessor, Benedict. Or does it? Conspiracy's faithful whisper that Petrus Romanus, the final prophecy, looms unclaimed, a pope who will watch Rome burn. Francis, the first pontiff from the New World, carries no Peter in his name, but prophecy is a shapeshifter. Perhaps. The Romang is not a name, but a reckoning, a collapse of the old order. A shepherd leading his flock through Ashgot, the mottos linger, relentless. They are Rorschach stains on history's page, divine code, hoax, or something more primal. A medieval monk's nightmare, bleeding into reality? Or proof that time is a mirror and every pope but a reflection of the Church's restless soul? One truth remains. In the Vatican's silent archives, the manuscript waits, its final pages heavy with storm. And the last riddle, asterisk in persecution. Extrema asterisk hangs in the air like a sword and fallen. But sharpened, asterisk, the final prophecy hangs like a shroud over the Vatican, asterisk in persecution extrema sancte Romane, ecclesia sedebit Petrus Romanus. Passit oves in multis tribulationibus. In the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, Peter the Romang will sit. He will shepherd his flock amid many tribulations. The words bleed doom, a cipher wrapped in sacrilege. Malachy's list ends here not with a pope, but with an epitaph. Since 1595, theologians have clawed at its meaning. Is Peter the Romang a name, a title, or a curse? The name Peter has never been reclaimed by a pope. To do so would invoke the weight of Christ's first apostle, a mantle too holy to bear. Yet in 2013, when Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio became Pope Francis' first Jesuit pontiff, first from the Americas, first to take the name of the saint of poverty conspiracy's vultures circled. Here was a pope who stripped the Vatican's gilded trappings, who washed the feet of prisoners, whose emblem bore a humble star and spikenard. A shepherd for an age of climate collapse and crumbling faith. But where is Peter? His doomsday forums, where is Rome? The theories metastasize. Some note that Francis, born to Italian immigrants in Argentina, carries Romang blood in his veins. Others dissect his papal motto, miserando aqua eligendo, by having mercy and by choosing for apocalyptic echoes. Conspiritualists whisper darker still. His election followed the unprecedented resignation of Benedict XVI, the first pope in 6 centuries to abandon the throne. To them, Benedict's ghostly title, Pope Emeritus, ruptured the sacred unity of the papacy, a schism foretold by Malachy's final persecution. The Vatican's denials only fuel the frenzy. When Francis addressed Congress in 2015, a storm drowned his words as he spoke of climate disaster. When he embraced transgender Catholics, traditionalists seethed of apostasy. Each crisis stitches itself to the prophecy's fabric, as if history itself is scripting the end. Yet scholars slash through the hysteria. Petrus Romanus is a 16th century forgery, insists Dr. Clara Mariani, Vatican archivist. Its generic eschatology early Christians wrote of a last persecution long before Malachi. The title Peter the Romang appears. Nowhere in church tradition. Even the Liber Pontificalis, chronicling early popes, never uses it. Historians argue the phrase evokes Nero redivivus, the ancient myth of an anti-Caesar rising to burn Rome anew. But why would a medieval saint crib pagan tropes? The answer, perhaps, lies in 1595 Roma city sacked by mutinous troops, its streets teeming with plague and panic. The Prophecies rediscoverers may have tailored it to terrify, a weapon of control in an age of collapse, still the faithful counter with cosmic symmetry. Malachy's 112th motto mirrors the 112th chapter of the Quran, which declares God eternal, unbegotten, coincidence, or a key to the cipher. Online sleuths dissect Francis' every gesture, his injured knee a tribulation of the flesh. His 2023 visit to Marseille, a city founded by Greeks as Massalia, place of the springs, echoing Malachy's shepherd tending flock in a desert. Even his choice of retirement, a sparse guest house over the apostolic palaces, twisted into prophecy, a pope who chooses exile, preparing for Rome's fall. The truth may lie in the silence between the lines. Malachy's vision was never about names, but patterns, cycles of hubris and ruin. Francis' papacy, with its fractures and reforms, mirrors the Church's eternal struggle to hold a fractured world together or to let it shatter into something new. As climate wars simmer and AI outpaces ethics, Peter the Roman becomes a Rorschach test for our collective dread. Theologian Karl Rahner once wrote that apocalypticism is the shadow cast by hope. Perhaps Malachy's prophecy, real or forged, endures not because it predicts the end, but because it dares us to reimagine it, to ask, as Rome's bells toll into the smog-thick night, whether the shepherd is meant to save the flock or to bury it. The battle over Malachy's prophecies rages in the shadowed corridors of academia, a war waged with ink and obsession. Skeptics, armed with the scalpels of reason, carve their case from the marrow of history, the manuscript's sudden 1595 reappearance. They argue, reeks of a 16th century forgery, a desperate gambit by a church hemorrhaging power to Luther's Reformation. The Latin phrases, they note, drip with anachronisms, terms unborn in Malachy's era, syntax too polished for a medieval mystic. Why, they demand, does the text lay dormant for 450 years, only to surface when the Vatican craved divine validation? A hoax, declares Dr. Emil Roth, his voice ablade, crafted to crown popes as fates chosen to turn men into myths. Yet believers strike back with venomous precision. What of Pius X, 1903 to 1914, branded Ignis Ardens, burning fire, a pope whose reign ended as Europe erupted into the flames of World War I? Or John the 23rd, pastor at Nauta, shepherd and sailor, who steered the Church through the tempest of Vatican II? These mottos, they hiss, align with events, centuries beyond the forger's grave. Coincidence? Scoffs theologian Maria Varelli. Or proof that some threads bind earth to heaven? The true enigma lies not in parchment, but in the psyche. Psychologists carve open the human hunger for patterns, apophenia, the compulsion to weave meaning from chaos. We see faces in clouds, saints in toast, prophecies in random phrases. Malachy's list thrives on this addiction, its vague mottos a Rorschach test for the desperate. Consider Demeditate Luna, from the half moon, a phrase that clung to Urban VII's 12-day reign in 1590, yet also to John Paul I's 33-day papacy in 1978, 2 half moons, 4 centuries apart. Is this divine foresight, or the mind's cruel trick, stitching grief into grandeur? Even skeptics falter here. Dr. Lena Shu, cognitive scientist, admits, we need the prophecies to be real. Without them, history is just noise. Yet the clash crescendos around a single, unanswerable riddle. If the manuscript is a 16th century fake, why does it name popes beyond 1590 with eerie accuracy? Why risk prediction if the lie could unravel? The Vatican's archives offer no answers, only dust and silence. Meanwhile, the prophecies mutate in the digital age, viral and venomous, their allure undimmed by logic. In online forums, Conspiracists dissect Francis' every cough as a sign of Petrus Romanus. In lecture halls, historians spar over ink isotopes and quill strokes. The truth, perhaps, is a phantom a dance of light and shadow, where faith and fraud twine like lovers. As the scholars' debate echoes into the void, one question remains, haunting as Malachy's ghost. In a world unmoored from certainty, do we cling to lies that comfort or truths that devour? The manuscript, ever silent, grins from the darkness. The prophecies seeped beyond the Vatican's cloistered halls like a virus, infecting the modern psyche with their Gothic allure. Don Brown's angels and demons weaponized them, casting Malachy's mottos as keys to a plot to vaporize Rome fiction, yes, but one that outsold scripture. Films and podcasts followed, each frame dripping with chiaroscuro dread, hooded figures deciphering Latin in candlelit bunkers, hackers scouring Vatican, servers for Peter the Roman clues. Online forums pulse with manic energy, where armchair theologians dissect Pope Francis' flu symptoms as harbingers of apocalypse. Yet this is no modern madness. Malachy's ghost dances in a lineage of doomed Nostradamus quatrains, the Mayan calendar's abortive 2012. The feverish algorithms of AI prophecy, bots all feeding humanity's oldest addiction. The craving to crack time's code. Why does the 12th century saint haunt us still? Because his mottos are a mirror reflecting not destiny, but our terror of its absence. The digital age, with its quantum computing and climate collapse, has not cured us of magic. It has digitized it. We flock to horoscopes swiped left on screens, while Reddit threads debate whether ChatGPT's gibberish contains cryptic truth. Malachy's prophecies thrive in this limbo, too vague to falsify, too precise to dismiss. They are the ultimate meme, replicating across centuries, adapting to every era's fears. The Reformation had its anti-popes. We have our deepfakes. Both eras share a hunger to believe that chaos has an author, that entropy has a plan, but the darkest truth lies in the question we dare not ask. Do we want the prophecies to be real? To accept them is to surrender to a plot written in celestial ink, to trade free will for the comfort of a storybook ending, even if that ending is fire. Psychologists call it narrative bias, poets call it grace. The prophecies force. A reckoning: is faith the courage to face randomness, or the cowardice to call it fate? Malachy's manuscript, now crumbling in some airless vault, offers no answer. It simply exists, a medieval monk's nightmare, refracted through Dan Brown's dollar signs and TikTok conspiracies, through AI's cold gaze and the Vatican's wary silence. In the end, the prophecies are a Rorschach test for the soul. We see in them what we fear to see in ourselves: the heretic's doubt, the zealot's certainty, the addict's need. They are a game without winners, a curse that outlives its caster. And as the world lurches toward unknowable tomorrow's climate migrations, synthetic consciousness, wars waged in orbital silence, Malachy's words endure, not because they predict, but because they seduce. They whisper the oldest lie of all, that in the end, amid the screaming chaos, something holds the script, the final irony. The prophecy's greatest legacy is not its truth, but our refusal to let it die. In the glow of a million screens, as algorithms churn out fresh apocalypses hourly, we still pause, breath held, to ask, what if this time the monk was right? The question lingers, haunting as a requiem as the stars burn on, indifferent, the sun dips behind St. Peter's Basilica, gilding its dome in a liar's gold. Below, a tourist snaps a selfie, oblivious to the weight pressing on the sky, the prophecy coiled like a serpent in the Vatican's belly. Somewhere beneath their feet, in a vault, sealed with dust and denial, Malachy's manuscript rots. Its words, though, refuse to die. They pulse in the hum of conspiracy forums, in the shudder of a world warming toward oblivion, in the silent scream of every generation that ever dared ask, is this the end? The tourist walks on, sandals scuffing sun-warmed cobblestones, while above them history's pendulum swings. Does it matter if the prophecies are lies? They have become a language, a lens, a fever we cannot sweat out. Centuries ago, a monk dreamed of shepherds in tribulation. Today, AI chatbots parse his mottos for patterns, neural networks gnawing on the bones of mysticism. We've traded quill and parchment for quantum code, yet the question remains, are we prisoners of fate? Or architects? The prophecy's true power lies not in prediction, but in provocation, a gauntlet thrown at the feet of free will. Every pope, every crisis, becomes a Rorschach blot. Francis' reforms, Benedict's resignation, the next conclave's smoke. Each is a stitch in the tapestry we weave with our dread and desire. The storm that raged on the manuscript's discovery night in 1590 never truly ceased. It brews now in the static of our screens, in the crackle of wildfires, in the whispered debates of historians hunched over midnight coffee. Malachy's vision, forged or faded, is a ghost train we board willingly, hungry for the thrill of the drop. As the tourist's shadow fades into the crowd, a nun pauses beneath Bernini's colonnade, her rosary beads clicking like a countdown. She gazes at the basilica's facade, where statues of saints stare into the void, their faces worn, smoothed by centuries of rain. What do they know that we do not? The answer is nothing, and everything. The prophecies are a chalice, empty but for what we pour into them. Our fear of chaos, our lust for order, our fragile hope that death is not a wall, but a door. The tourist, now boarding a bus, checks their phone, a notification about war, a meme about the end times, a tweet dissecting the Pope's latest speech. They sigh, swipe, and forget. But in the Vatican's heart the unbroken thread quivers, asterisk in persecution extrema. The final act is unwritten. The pen, Malachy's ghost whispers, is still in your hand. As night falls, Rome's bells toll the hour, their sound echoing across the Tiber, over the Alps, through time itself. The stars blink, indifferent. The question lingers, etched into the dark. Asterisk, when the next storm comes, will you watch it? Or become it?